I was talking to my next door neighbour who said, "Oh, you shouldn't have been saying that." I said, "Well, your son's playing footy." "Yeah, he's 12. Okay, some 14-year-old that's 20 kilos heavier than your kid runs through your son like that." And you could see his face just go white.
Hey there, welcome to our podcast. Before we jump into today's episode, could you please do us a solid? If you're enjoying what you hear, give us a 5-star rating and hit that subscribe button on your platform. It really helps us reach more parents, coaches, and youth in the youth athlete development scene. All right, let's get into this week's chat.
Then I wanted to kind of touch on the language in the media and then also the way commentators, obviously the footy show kind of cracks me up, and they kind of, from time to time, you get the old heads kind of downplaying and whatnot. I feel like you're rolling your eyes at this. How do you think it's changed? First of all, has it changed? If so, how has it changed? Then where do you think it's going to start leading towards when the media start covering this in a different light, in the way that you think it's going to provide more benefit to these individuals that are playing a game where they're, to some degree, they are putting their lives on the line?
Absolutely. It's it has been a bit of an evolution. It's still an evolution.
We're in the middle of it.
Yeah, we're kind of in the middle, I reckon. Yeah, it's a good observation there, because in 2016 I got into huge trouble because I made a comment around, and this is going way back, so people may not know or remember it, the Mumford incident where he pretty much ran through an opponent, and they called it the greatest tackle of the century. Said this is the way that footy should be played, all this sort of stuff. And I on X or Twitter, I messaged saying we shouldn't be glorifying these impacts, because only 4 days prior there was a player who had to retire in tears, that the media was saying it's so sad that he had to retire because of too many concussions, and yet now 4 days later you're lauding this pretty much violent act. And for the next 3 days I'm justifying myself in the media, where people are saying it's completely legal, and I said, yeah, it's completely legal, but it's how you described it. It's how you put this on a pedestal, because what you've got to remember is that some kid's going to see this and go, well, if he can do it, I can do it. And I was talking to my next door neighbour who said, "Oh, you shouldn't have been saying that." And I said, "Well, your son's playing footy." "Yeah, he's 12. Yep. How about he's playing in the under-14s league?" "Yep." "Okay, some 14-year-old that's 20 kilos heavier than your kid," because he was kind of a very slight kid, "runs through your son like that." And you could see his face just go white. I said, this is what we need to change the commentary around, and we need to change the culture about this to laud good play, skillful play, great play, rather than just the heavy hits. And so what we're starting to see now is that commentators are less likely to elevate that. It still happens sometimes, but and talk more about, okay, he's going to do the concussion protocols. We've got the experts looking after him. He's going to be, we've got to make sure that there's less of these discussions around the impact itself, and the fact that that was probably not right there. It wasn't completely legal. It wasn't completely illegal, but at the same time, we don't think that that's a really. He could have got out of that contest or something like that. So we're starting to see a little bit more about that. We're still concerned. I'm still concerned about the whole words around courageous. It's
head over the ball. Yeah, that's a big one.
Yes, that's right. So committed. He's in hospital right now, but don't worry about that. That sort of concern. And so I'm involved with a charity called the Concussion Legacy Foundation, and one of the projects that we want to set up, which is in America right now, but we want to try and bring it to Australia, is the media project, where we want to educate commentators, journalists, even podcasters, around the language of concussion, what exactly it is, what it's not, how we describe it, what we need to be talking about, rather than just, sort of trying to be sort of almost hyper-masculine around, such a great, courageous man, and it's just rah, 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 and, they're going out to war and all this sort of stuff. And we've got to redefine what an elite athlete really is. And so that's a bit of work in progress. And also another project that we want to try and set up, which is in America as well, is called the Team Up Speak Up, where athletes will look out for their teammates rather than just pulling them up by the jump and going, come on, you're okay, come on, don't get caught out being done for concussion, come on, keep going. And then, even opponents, sort of going, oh, I should have, hang on, trainer, and just trying to look out for each other.
I have seen that a few times now, especially in the NRL. They're more likely to look after each other.
Yes,
I've seen that quite a bit, and then they'll try and almost like stop play to some degree, or at least flag the trainer down.
That's right.
Then the play will just continue.
Yeah, exactly. Rather than sort of continuing on and just letting that player, sort of lie there.
Yeah, just try and gather himself from where he probably can't.
No, that's right.
Quite literally. You made an interesting point. Like a lot of people really are attracted to storytelling, and that's where I think this is going to really get that message across. Yeah. Is when you said to your neighbour, the 14-year-old son, if he's playing against someone who's 15, 20 kilos heavier, which is happening, especially between the ages of 14, 16 years old. Yep. The vast sizes of little Timmy versus Big Johnny, and they could be playing under 15s and especially because if they're born at different times of the year, you also have to take that into consideration as well. And then you got this big kid bowling over the little ones. Yep. Yes, that big kid might be able to get the possession, but it's coming at the cost of little Timmy. And then little Timmy is like, all right, I don't want to play anymore. So then you've lost another. That's right. And that's the concern that we're seeing, is that there are lots of kids, but parents like, oh, I'm too scared to play. I don't know if I can be up against the opponents who are, a metre taller and 20 kilos heavier. I don't want to do that. And I think that's gonna, I guess, what we're seeing in the AFL, they're bigger and stronger. A lot of these kids coming in, they've got 3, 4, 5 years of gym experience as well. So you're getting these kids are a lot stronger coming through than, especially now. It's what I've noticed is become a bit more of an arms race across a lot of the contact sports. All right, got to get in the gym now. They're getting in the gym a lot younger now, which I think is great. I think it's phenomenal. What we're going to see is unfortunately the bigger kids will flourish, and then obviously the little kids, they're going to get lack of a better term, like bulldozed, or they're going to be running scared to some degree. It wasn't Max Holloway. I was listening to a YouTuber, and he was quoting Max Holloway, and he was talking about when they're sparring, it's more about serious play. And I thought this term was actually quite good, because maybe we can start, especially with the juniors, is all right, if you're going to wrestle each other, all right, it's about serious play. It's about getting yourself in the right position, and then being able to meet each other's energy, and not trying to actually hurt someone. And I thought this was actually a really good term, and they do it quite a lot with Cuban boxing. It's more about if you're sparring someone, it's not about you trying to load up.
No, that's right.
It's about you just trying to use whatever strategy your coach has given you, your trainer, is be able to utilize that within that 3 minutes. Whether it's the Muay Thai guys, if you're trying to trip someone up, you trip them up, but then you help them get back up, and then it's all right, you're open here, and then everyone's learning from that as well. So then it's kind of like it's kind of like the tipping point of just before it gets too serious as well. So I think something like that can actually be implemented. And as you mentioned, it's only 15 minutes of hard contact over in the UK. Bringing that to here would actually be really good. But restructuring as it's more serious play, getting into the right positions. If you've got the ball, just take the tackle, take the hit. It's going to be somewhat of an impact, but they're learning how to get into the right positions and stay out of the bad positions as well. So I think time is really the main thing with this, but then also the work that you're doing and then all your colleagues as well, is obviously going to help move everything in the right direction. Because at the moment you're kind of like pushing uphill.
Yeah, and it is, and it's just we're pushing against a culture that doesn't want things to change, and so I get a lot of comments like, oh, well, the game's going to change so much, and I'm like, okay, all right, so in 2024, here's the game. Do you think it's changed since 1994? Oh, yeah, heaps. Okay, do you think that the game in 1994 has changed since 1964? Oh, yeah. Do you think that the game in 1964 is completely different to when it was played in 1934? Yeah. Okay, so in 2054, it's probably going to look different again. And the generation that is going to be watching the game is going to appreciate the game at that point in time and maybe look back and go, I can't believe that they were allowed, what they allow in terms of contact or bulldozing through each other. I can't believe that, Maynard did that to Brayshaw back in that would just, so it's sort of, it's something that we have to accept, and that what we appreciate about the game in 30 years' time is not going to be the same as what it is now. And developing athletes for that evolution, how it's going to look, I don't know, but I'm just a neuroscientist, it's not my issue. But I want to see players not retiring at 21, 22, 24 years of age, devastated that they can't play. And not just AFL players, these are club players. I got a message on the weekend saying, one guy just said, I know I've taken too many hits and I see what you talk about. I can't take this risk anymore. I want to play, but I can't, I should have listened previously. So this is club players who have almost felt let down that they can't even play with their mates because they've tried to push through over the years previously. So that's one thing that we've got to try and stop. And the second is to make sure that when players do retire at the appropriate time on their own terms, is that they know that for the next 50 years that there's no, am I going to be demented? Could I be demented? I don't know. What am I going to do? What do I have? And that constant fear.
Well, I don't know. This is really old. Do you know Chris Benoit? Do you remember? Yeah, that was a tragedy and a half. What happened there? So, and unfortunately, it has happened. I think it was like a year or two ago. Happened up in Queensland. I think we spoke about it before this, where we've had athletes that had a lot of head injuries, brain injuries, and then they go into normal life post-career. And then you mentioned you wanted to try and do a little bit of work. Did you want to talk about that specifically as well? Yeah. We can do about how post-career, we talk about in-career, but now, you said before, what do you want to do, 30, 40, 50 years down the track? Yeah. Like, what does that mean for people? What's the potential fallout?
Well, this is it, exactly. And you do hear of these stories of just complete, tragedy as a result of that. So you've got athletes who are struggling to re-identify themselves as someone else other than an athlete, plus the compounding factor of potential brain damage. So the ability to rationalise and to think is compensated. So, it's a recipe for disaster. And, for everyone, Chris Benoit, we've got dozens that don't get heard of because they're not famous athletes. So that's something else that we need to address. And, the transition from sport research or science of transition to sport has been going on since the 1960s.
Wow, that's a long time.
Yes. And it's taken on different names, and currently it's called transition from sport, but it was retirement from sport, that sort of stuff. And we haven't, unfortunately, and this is one of the reasons why I talk so openly, is because I think a lot of the transition in sport research doesn't get out to the wider population because it's very much contained in the ivory castle of academia, as I call it.
Very insular.
Yeah, and for a long time their concussion was not talked about as well, only in the ivory castles of academia, because only smart people could talk about this and we couldn't get it out there to the people who need it most. But there's a group that's starting that's been set up by a former Carlton player, Ken Hunter. and he's created a charity called Fifth Quarter. And it might be worthwhile getting him, to come and have a chat, because he talks about the transition process and how difficult it is for athletes to, re-establish themselves outside of their sport, whether it's football or cricket or tennis or whatever, and they just don't know where to turn to, who to talk to. Even just having some peer support, they don't want to have to see a psychologist, so they might just want to, have a talk to Trent, because Trent's been through the process. What was it like for you, mate? Yeah, I did this, I did that. That's all they want. Or as an athlete, I was never told how to do banking. How do I get on this app, and how do I transfer some money? What do I do? It's simple things like that people don't realise, because everyone lives their days and they just do this with, take it for granted. For athletes who are protected, they walk into the club at 7 a.m. and every minute of the day until they leave until 5
it's
managed. Yeah, you're here now, you're over there. Oh yeah, you're over here. You've got this to do. And
it's like high school.
Yeah, it is very much. And so they haven't progressed much. So Fifth Quarter are there to try and set up a support for athletes. And I did do some collaborative research with some researchers in looking at the transition from sport for AFL players that we published late last year. And what we found was that players who were retired had a better experience of transition from their club than those that were delisted. So those that were delisted were almost, okay, we're making you redundant. See you later.
Yeah.
You're retiring. Oh, well, we're going to have this for you. We'll have this media conference. We're going to have drinks and a farewell dinner or whatever. All the stuff that
all the trimmings.
Yeah, all the trimmings that the PR and comms media people would set up for a positive transition. And a lot of athletes who were retiring were already thinking about that, so they had already set up potential businesses, set up a life beyond, whereas the delisted players were still identified as an athlete, and all of a sudden they're going, what? I'm no longer playing. What do I do? And so, yeah, that's the sort of stuff that we've identified, but, you throw in brain injuries, it makes it more challenging.
Wow.
Yes.
Oh, we could go down the rabbit hole.
Yes.
Even further. Wow. That honestly, I know personally for me, I started rugby league quite late. I think I was like 13 or 14 at the time. Was fortunate enough to play semi-professional over in the US.
Yep.
Then I kind of knew that, all right, I'm not going to make it far, but I enjoy training, I enjoy sport and all that jazz. So I ended up going into doing sports science as well. Then I kind of knew that my career was just going to be like, all right, let's just have a twilight year and just pack it up and I'm gone. And that ended up working perfectly for me. But I know that we do have quite a few athletes here that are very much riding on, that is the destination that they want to land on. But, what is there for after? And that's why I think like collegiate sport, it has something right in that degree where you literally earn a degree throughout your studies, or if you go professional you can actually come back. And then it was one of the coach, Tony Granado, I'll probably butcher his name, he's the men's hockey coach. He actually finished his degree in his 50s. Yeah, okay. Which was really quite interesting. So he ended up getting a scholarship, playing hockey for Wisconsin, played professionally, then he came back and finished his degree because maybe coaching is not his thing that he wants to do till...
not everyone wants to be a coach.
No, which is fair enough. But he might want to pack it in, maybe just want to open a business or have a bit more of a low-key life, going into his 60s. And I thought that was quite interesting in terms of, college sports really do that, and we're starting to see it here to some degree as well. But I think if that needs to actually start to filter down to more like the Coates League, like a lot of the state programs that we have. It's just like, yes, we are trying to build them into the team, but what are they doing outside as well?
Yeah, absolutely, and it's having that balance. have a goal, have an identity that you're an athlete towards where you want to get to, but it's got to be in some balance. So it's having something alongside that can give you almost some time out from being immersed as an athlete in that particular sport, because you can't do it, 14 hours a day, 7 days a week.
No.
You go to training, you focus on your training, whether it's in the gym or on the court or in the field. But then in those downtimes, you need to be doing something else to give you a sense of balance. And one of the biggest mistakes that was happening in the 1990s, maybe the late 1980s as well, was this whole specialisation. You start to specialise as early on as you can, and that is all you do. And that was a recipe for disaster, I think. And it wasn't based on evidence. There were these, periodisation models that had long-term periodisation, which kind of talk about specialisation. And people misconstrued the message that you've got to specialise almost as early as possible.
That's quite literal, yeah.
Yeah, literal. And, we as a result, we've seen a lot of athletes just burn out, injury, but then having psychological issues.
Substance abuse.
Yeah, absolutely. Trying to take away the pain of not becoming, particularly like I was involved in a lot of the racket sports, and everyone was going to become number one in the world. I'm like, well, okay, there's one number one in the world. How many others aren't there?
Yeah.
And unfortunately, they saw the models around the Agassi's and the Williams, and statistical probability is that there will be one that gets through.
There's always an anomaly. Yeah.
But for one Agassi or one Serena, there are tens of thousands that don't make it.
Yeah.
And so where do we go? And so that's the concern, that we got to have a balance here.
Yeah, because I know swimming's quite a prolific sport that this has actually happened, especially in the 2000s where...
Yep. Well, what's the age for masters in swimming?
Oh, I think it's 35, I think.
I thought it was younger than that, because swimmers were retiring in their late teens, early 20s.
Now they're a lot later, and they're crushing it at the moment.
Yes. And so we've seen an evolution then.
Yeah.
Because, it used to be you could swim masters at something like 25 or something like that.
That's not masters. It should be like the pinnacle.
So exactly. And so now so that's a good thing that's happening, is that if swimmers are having longer careers. And
I think Kaylee McKeon. I think at the moment there's nationals up on the Gold Coast, and then there's world records already dropped. I think Australian records have dropped.
Yep.
And these are girls that are in their probably mid to late 20s.
Yeah, which is good.
Which is good.
Absolutely.
I think Kate Campbell she's trying to go to her fourth or fifth Olympic Games.
Yep.
I think she's like 31, 32 or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, so that was unheard of a decade ago.
Yeah, gymnastics would probably be the typical one.
That's right.
But I think that's starting to change, where it's more
that's right.
early, mid-20s.
Yes.
I think they're sticking around a little bit longer.
That's right, whereas they used to retire about 16.
Yeah, because they're early specialisation.
Yes, that's right, exactly. So, and I don't want to normally name drop, but one of my former students was James Podsiadly. And, we had a conversation. It was not long after Angus Brayshaw retired. And, he said to me, he didn't start playing till he was 17. And he ended up winning a premiership at 28 years of age. He said, I was very old to win a premiership. But, I had a longer career. I don't have that worry about brain injuries. I said, because you didn't start at 5 or 6. You started later. And so that exposure risk is reduced, but you still won a premiership.
Does that lead to the question, because I know in the NRL you start tackling, I think it's the age of 7s and under, I believe. Mm-hmm. Obviously you have your own beliefs on that, or you got your own opinions on that.
Yes.
Does that mean that we should be looking towards more backing that off for as long as possible now in terms of contact for juniors?
Yes. And again, this is one of the sort of real sort of pressure points in terms of our advocacy from the science. We don't advocate without the evidence. But what we see because of this exposure risk is the fact that, we want to modify sports till 14 years of age. So learning the skills of the game, learning the strategies of the game, having what you call the serious play to help teach in a controlled environment how to tackle, how to be tackled, but not just the sort of the uncontrolled impacts that you see in training and
like the caveman-like brute force.
That's right. And so that's something that we, would like to see. So maybe from the age of 11, 12, they start to introduce controlled tackle techniques and, safe play, so that by the time they're 14, they're not all of a sudden having to learn how to do these things. They're already experienced, but now you've graduated to the full rules.
I will argue that most kids can't control themselves. So you put them into contact.
Yes. And so, the argument I get back is, well, if they don't learn the skills early, they're not going to be able to learn. And I say, well, Adam Goods didn't start to 16. James Pozziati didn't start to 17. And there are others too. There's not just two of, there are plenty of examples. One of the things, one of the people that we analysed at the Brain Bank, her name was Jacinda Barclay. She played for GWS. She actually played baseball as a kid, and she represented Australia as a baseballer.
Wow.
But she didn't start playing contact football. She started playing the women's American football. I don't know what they call it now. They used to call it lingerie league. And it was really sexist. It was not but it was full contact. I think they call it the Dream League now, something different. But they've taken away that sort of
American
sexist,
football.
Yeah, but it was still American football. Yeah. She didn't start playing that till she was about 16 or so. She then came back and was able to play AFL women's from the age of 23, 24. And then when she passed away, again at about 28 years of age, we found a little bit of damage, but it was not CTE. So she was not the same as Heather Anderson, who started at 5 years of age. So, what I say to, some of the players who come into my lab testing is, think of it as wear and tear. Same as your shoulder, same as it doesn't mean that you've got CTE. There will be some wear and tear if you're playing, sport like that. There will be some wear and tear. But the fact that, you probably didn't start till you were about 12 or 13 is a good thing for you. So that's the sort of stuff that we're trying to address now. CTE is something that we'll find in those who have longer careers and started earlier, rather than those that started a little bit later.
Yeah, that's good. I appreciate that. Do you just want to quickly plug the Brain Bank and all the work that you're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Australian Sports Brain Bank, we're now into our 6th year of operation, started in 2018. We take pledges, which doesn't mean that we're going to come round to your house and get your brain while you're still alive. But if you go to brainbank.org.au, that's the information, and you can request a package for pledging your brain to science. But if you're also passionate about it, we can also help with donations as well. So you can certainly donate to help us do the research, because each brain costs about $5,000 to $6,000 to analyse. So it's not cheap.
No.
And then I'm also involved with the Concussion Legacy Foundation Australia. I'm one of the co-founders there. And that is more about education and awareness about concussion as well as CTE. The Brain Bank's focused on CTE. So Concussion Legacy Foundation looks at education, awareness, research as well, which we're trying to raise funds for research, and also one of the things about the CLF is that we have a helpline, so support is one of our pillars as well. So if anyone has a question they're not sure about, they've heard something about, it's not a non-emergency helpline. They can send a message. It's manned by a medical doctor who will respond within 12 hours if they can request a phone call, and he can have a chat to you, if you're concerned about something. But also we have a network of allied health medical practitioners. If you're in Adelaide somewhere and you're struggling to, talk to someone, we've got practitioners there that you can refer to. And we're also starting up a peer support network. So, a couple of footballers are saying, I want to put my hand up to be able to allow myself to talk to someone, because I had no one when I was struggling with my post-concussion syndrome. So, I want to be there to reassure people that, you can get through it. And so, we're doing quite well, and that's concussionfoundation.org.au.
That'd be good. Almost like a men's shed kind of thing.
Yeah,
catch up for coffee or something like that.
As simple as that. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. We have Zoom support quarterly as well, so people can come on and tell their stories and listen to other people's stories to know that they're not alone. And this is one of the things that we want to try and break down the barriers, that people who are struggling it's not just you. There are many others who have similar experiences as well.
You're not going to suffer in silence, essentially.
Absolutely.
Cool. Thanks for coming down. I got so much. We literally ticked over the hour. It was a really good episode. I really appreciate it. If you like this episode, please like, subscribe, share. Alan does phenomenal work. I've been following his stuff for a couple of years now. I love it. Your tweets are funny. Tweets are great. You just kind of
I have a lot of fun with that.
Sometimes you just kind of you smack yourself in the forehead when you hear some of the stuff coming out of the media.
Yeah.
Follow Alan on social media, on X, Instagram.
Yep.
Instagram's the most I see.
Yeah. And the handle's the same, so it's at Alan Pearce PhD.
Awesome. See you on the next one.
You have just listened to the Inner Athlete podcast. Be sure to subscribe to stay up to date with the release of weekly episodes. Be sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram to get great tips on all things youth athlete development and youth mentoring.